My wife secretly orchestrated a $100,000 embezzlement from her boss, then lied about the whole thing, only for her to claim my inheritance of $250, $0 as joint property, and now she's threatening legal action to take it all. I never thought I'd be the guy writing a story like this, but here I am. It all started with a gut feeling, a nagging suspicion that something was off. My wife Lisa had always been a bit of a bitch, demanding, manipulative, and quick to lie when it suited her. But lately, her behavior had taken a turn I just couldn't ignore. She became secretive, sneaking around her phone, hiding things, and snapping at me over the smallest stuff. I figured maybe she was stressed at work or having a rough patch, but deep down, I knew there was more to it. It all unraveled in the worst way possible. One night I was just scrolling through her phone, expecting to find some harmless texts, but instead, I stumbled onto something that made my stomach drop. There was a series of encrypted messages, passcodes she used to hide files, and a bunch of emails from her boss, Mr. Carter. At first, I thought maybe she was just working late, but then I saw the numbers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars transferred, schemes she was bragging about. She'd orchestrated a $100,000 embezzlement from her boss. She lied about everything, told me she was just working overtime, but she was actually stealing money. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I trusted, was deep into this scam. And it wasn't just a one-time thing. She had been doing it for months. I kept digging, trying to find out if she was involved with someone else, but this was worse. She had lied about her job, about her integrity, about who she was. And to top it off, she'd been feeding me some story about how she was just helping out someone at work, that she was doing it for a good cause. Yeah, right. She's always been good at lying, but this was next level. One thing that hit me hard was her recent attitude about money. She'd been pushing for a bigger house, nicer clothes, luxury vacations, all while secretly siphoning off thousands. She was so bitchy about money, demanding, entitled, dismissive of my concerns, and now I see it. Was all a cover. She thought she could get away with it, that I'd never find out. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind raced, trying to process how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to the truth. Then came the part that made my blood boil. I remembered her claiming that I was just jealous or overreacting whenever I'd ask about her late nights or her phone. She'd tell me I was paranoid, that I didn't trust her. But now I knew she'd been lying to my face all along. It was like she was living a double life, and I was just another fool in her game. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly kind of stupid for not seeing it sooner. The next day I confronted her. I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I sat her down, my hands trembling, and laid everything out. Her secret emails, the stolen money, the lies. Her face twisted into a smirk, and she tried to deny everything, saying I was crazy, that I was just jealous of her success. She said I was imagining things, that she'd never do something so reckless. But I had proof, I had everything. Still, she insisted she was innocent, that she was just trying to help her boss out of a jam, that she was doing what she had to do. That was her excuse, always some version of I was just helping, no matter how bad it looked. I felt a storm of emotions, anger, disbelief, heartbreak. I'd always thought we had something real, something solid. But now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative liar who had no respect for me or our marriage. I'd been played for a fool. The worst part was how she kept spinning her stories, how she refused to take responsibility. She kept crying, acting like the victim, trying to turn everything around on me. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I knew I had to decide what to do next, and I knew I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I've never felt so lost. I was angry at her, but also hurt deeply. I kept thinking about all those years, all the moments I thought were real, all the trust I gave her. And now it felt like that trust had been shredded beyond repair. I wondered how many other lies were hiding behind her pretty face. I was furious, feeling betrayed not just by her actions but by the fact that I'd been so blind. I kept asking myself, how did I not see this coming? How did I miss all the signs? And most of all, how do I move on from this? That's what I'm trying to figure out now. After that confrontation, everything shifted. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and my mind kept racing over what I'd uncovered. The worst part was realizing that my wife, Lisa, had been lying to me for months, probably longer. She'd always been bitchy and manipulative, but I never thought she'd go this far, steal from her boss, and then try to twist it all around to make herself look innocent. I felt sick, betrayed, and I guess a little stunned that I hadn't seen the signs earlier. I started digging deeper into her phone, her emails, her bank accounts. I needed to understand just how deep this rabbit hole went. That's when I found the emails from her boss, Mr. Carter, discussing the embezzlement. She'd been funneling money into accounts she controlled, fabricating receipts, and even creating fake invoices to hide the theft. It was professional, cold, calculated. That's when I realized this wasn't some impulsive act but a carefully planned scheme. She'd been planning this for months, and I was just the last piece in her puzzle. Her reaction to the confrontation was classic. She played the victim, claiming she was just trying to help out her boss, that she'd only taken a little here and there, and that she never meant for things to get out of control. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting. She even accused me of not trusting her, like that was the real issue. She said I was just jealous because she was successful and that I was insecure. But I knew better. I knew she'd been lying about everything, and her excuses sounded hollow as hell. The thing that really hurt was her tone, bitchy, dismissive, condescending. She told me I was making a big deal out of nothing, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. But her words felt hollow, like she was just trying to manipulate me into backing off. She kept insisting she was innocent, that she'd never do something so reckless, yet her actions told a different story. She'd been playing me all along, and I'd been too blind to see it. I felt a mix of rage and sadness, rage that she'd betray me like this, and sadness because I still loved her, or at least I did before I saw her true face. Over the next few days, I stayed quiet, trying to process everything. I started to question whether I even knew her at all. We'd been together for over 10 years, built a life, shared a home, and I thought I knew her inside out. But now I realized I'd been living with a stranger, someone who could lie so convincingly, steal so brazenly, and then turn around and cry crocodile tears when caught. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One night, I decided I needed to get some answers. I sat her down again, this time more calmly but with steel in my voice. I told her I knew everything, the embezzlement, the lies, the deception, and I asked her what the hell was going on. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to play innocent, like she was above it all. She said she was just helping her boss out again, as if that explained everything. I cut her off and told her I wasn't stupid. I said I'd been through her phone, her emails, her bank accounts, and I knew the truth. She tried to deny it, but I had receipts, screenshots, bank statements. I was done being lied to. That's when she got really angry. Her face turned red, her voice raised, and she started yelling at me, calling me paranoid and controlling. She told me I was overreacting, that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. She even accused me of being insecure and jealous, like that was the real issue. But I wasn't buying her bullshit. I saw her for what she was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying her integrity and our marriage. Honestly, I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. Relief because now I knew the truth, and despair because I'd invested so much in this relationship, years of trust, love, and shared dreams, and it all felt like it was crumbling. I started to think about the money, her theft, her lies, and how it all connected to her attitude about money and power. She always wanted more, and now I saw that her greed was bigger than I thought. She wasn't just bitchy, she was dangerous. The more I looked into her, the more I realized I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. I had to decide what to do next. Part of me wanted to walk away, cut my losses, and forget about her. But another part, the stubborn part, wanted justice. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this, not just for me but for the principal. I started thinking about how to get even, how to make her pay for what she'd done, emotionally, financially, whatever it took. I knew I'd have to be smart about it, but I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. Not anymore. I've always believed in karma, and I think that's what I'm counting on now. She's played her hand, and I've got the evidence. The question is, what's the best way to make her regret this? How do I reclaim my life after such a betrayal? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But one thing for sure, my trust in her is shattered, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at her the same way again. After the initial shock wore off, I started to get a clearer picture of what I was dealing with. Lisa's lies, her manipulations, they all pointed to a pattern of selfishness that I'd ignored for too long. I knew I had to act, but I also knew I couldn't do anything rash. I needed a plan, something calculated. I couldn't just blow everything up without thinking about the consequences. First, I decided I'd gather all the evidence I could find. I backed up her emails, took screenshots of her bank statements, and even made copies of the fake invoices she'd generated. I wanted to be prepared for whatever legal or financial fight was heading my way. It was clear she was planning to claim my inheritance, $250, that I'd recently come into from my late grandfather. She had the nerve to call it joint property, even though I'd made it clear from the start that it was my inheritance. She's always been bitchy about money, demanding that she deserves more, but this was next level. She was threatening legal action, claiming she had a right to half of it because we're married. Honestly, I was furious. I'd worked my ass off to save that money, and now she was trying to take it all, using her lies, her manipulations, and her fake tears. I knew she'd spin this as her right, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I decided I needed to get ahead of her, maybe even involve a lawyer myself. I contacted a friend who's a lawyer and asked for advice. The guy was blunt. She's playing dirty, but if you have proof she's been embezzling, you might have a strong case for fraud, or at least to block her from claiming your inheritance. That gave me some hope. I realized I wasn't just fighting a cheating wife. I was fighting someone who was willing to ruin everything for her own gain. Meanwhile, Lisa kept pushing her narrative. She accused me of being paranoid and controlling, claiming I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She threw in some tears, acting like I was the bad guy for catching her. She told me I didn't trust her, that I was insecure. I wanted to scream at her that it was her own lies that had broken the trust, not me, but I kept quiet. I knew I needed to stay calm, keep my head clear. If I lost my temper now, I'd give her more ammunition. She also started throwing around threats, legal threats mainly. She said if I tried to block her from claiming my inheritance, she'd sue me for joint property, even though I knew she had no claim. She's good at lying, but I had enough evidence to back me up. Still, her threats made me realize I had to be more strategic. I couldn't just confront her and hope for the best. I needed to set traps, protect myself legally, and get ready for a fight. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, angry, and honestly, a little scared. I'd always thought we had something real, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything for money. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I ignored her bitchy attitude about money, her controlling tendencies. I'd been so blind. It's like I was living with a stranger, and now I was wondering if I even knew who she was anymore. I started to distance myself emotionally. I didn't want to let her see how much her betrayal hurt me, but inside I was seething. I kept replaying everything: the stolen money, her lies, the way she'd spin stories to make herself look innocent. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let her manipulate me further. I started planning my next moves, how to protect what's mine and how to make her pay for what she'd done. I wasn't just thinking about revenge. I was thinking about making sure she doesn't get away with this. In the back of my mind, I kept coming back to the inheritance. That money was supposed to be my safety net, my way out if I decided to leave or start over. Now, I wasn't sure if she'd try to claim it all, or if she'd just try to destroy me financially. I had to be ready for her to go to extremes. I started consulting more legal advice, researching how to protect my assets, and how to confront her in a way that would leave her with nothing to twist against me. The most frustrating part is that I still love her, or at least I did. That's what hurts the most, knowing that the woman I married, the woman I trusted, was capable of this. The betrayal runs so deep that I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. But I also know I can't just stay passive. I need to fight for what's mine, for my dignity, and for my peace of mind. If she thinks she can threaten me into submission, she's got another thing coming. I've got evidence, I've got plans, and I'm ready to fight dirty if I have to. This whole situation has opened my eyes to how little I really knew her. I thought I was with someone who loved me, who was honest and loyal. Turns out, she's just been playing a game all along, one where she's the only winner. And I'm starting to realize that I need to decide whether I want her in my life after this, or if it's better to cut ties for good. Either way, I refuse to be the fool anymore. I'm done being manipulated. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to come out of this stronger. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, financial planning, and sleepless nights. I spent every free moment poring over her emails, bank statements, and the fake invoices she'd created. My mind kept circling back to the inheritance, $250, I'd recently received from my grandfather's estate. That money was supposed to be my safety net, my ticket out if I decided to leave or start fresh somewhere else. Now it felt like a target. She was threatening to claim it as joint property, and I could see her spinning her lies, trying to turn it into her victory. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer I knew, Tom, a guy I'd met through a friend. I laid everything out, her embezzlement, her threats, her lies about the inheritance. Tom listened carefully and then told me, "You've got a strong case for fraud and to protect your inheritance, but you need to be cautious. She's manipulative and probably prepared to fight dirty. We'll need to get a court order to freeze her assets if she tries to claim the money." That was a relief, but it also made me realize I was about to go into a legal war I hadn't signed up for. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude grew more bitchy and entitled. She kept insisting she was entitled to half of everything, including my inheritance. She'd throw tantrums, scream that I was trying to cheat her, and accuse me of controlling her. Honestly, her bitchiness was exhausting, but I had learned to tune her out. I knew her game now. She was trying to wear me down, to make me give up, or to scare me into backing off. But I wasn't going to let her win that easily. She started to threaten me directly. "If you block me from claiming what's rightfully ours, I'll take you to court," she spat one evening, "and I'll make sure you never see a dime of that inheritance." That made my blood boil. I knew she was bluffing, but the fact she even dared to threaten me like that made me realize how far she was willing to go. I had to be ready to counter her with everything I had. I also began to notice her trying to manipulate the situation with her friends and family. She'd call them, tell her sob stories about how I was trying to control her and how she was just trying to do the right thing. It was classic gaslighting, trying to turn everyone against me, make me look like the villain. But I kept my head clear. I kept records of everything she said, everything she did. If this went to court, I needed to have proof that she was the one lying and scheming. Emotionally, I was a wreck. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. It was like discovering I'd been living with a stranger all these years. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, her bitchy attitude about money, her controlling tendencies, and why I didn't see her true colors sooner. I felt like a fool, but at the same time I was determined. I'd been played, yes, but I wasn't going down without a fight. One night, I finally confronted her again. I told her I had enough evidence to go to court and block her claim to my inheritance. I told her she could threaten all she wanted, but I wasn't backing down. I also told her that I knew about her scheme, her embezzlement, and I was prepared to turn that over to the authorities if necessary. Her face twisted into a sneer and she spat, "You're making a huge mistake. You think you can stop me? I'll ruin you." That was the moment I realized she was dangerous, not just manipulative but potentially vindictive, and I knew I had to be cautious. I started documenting everything, her threats, her lies, her manipulations, and I made sure my lawyer had copies. I also began to plan my next moves, including how to protect myself financially. I was not going to let her take what was legally mine, and I was not going to be her pawn or her victim anymore. The emotional toll was heavy. I kept replaying everything, her lies, her cheating, her theft. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, entitled woman who'd do anything to get her way. The heartbreak was almost worse than the betrayal. I'd loved her once, or at least I thought I did. But now I saw her as a thief, a liar, and someone who had no boundaries or respect for me. That realization made me feel sick, but it also gave me clarity. I had to protect myself, my future, and my inheritance. As I sat alone in my apartment one night, I reflected on everything I'd learned. I'd been naive, blind, and too trusting. But I was also stronger than I thought. I'd start fighting back legally, and I'd make sure she didn't get away with her lies and manipulations. That money, my inheritance, was my safety net. I wasn't going to let her steal it or destroy me. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles, more lies, and probably more surprises. But I was done being the victim. It was time to take control. The legal battle was more draining than I expected. Every day brought new obstacles, new lies from Lisa, and more evidence I had to gather to protect myself. I kept thinking about how she had manipulated everyone around her, her family, her friends, and how she was trying to spin this whole mess to make herself look innocent. But I had the receipts, the proof of her embezzlement, her fake invoices, her secret accounts. I knew I had the upper hand, but I also knew she was cunning and willing to go to extremes to win. One afternoon, I received a formal letter from her lawyer. Lisa had filed a claim to joint property, asserting her right to half of my inheritance. It was a slap in the face, but also confirmation that I needed to act fast. I responded with a legal notice, demanding she cease any claims to my estate until the case was settled. I also made it clear I had evidence of her theft, which I was prepared to present in court. I wanted her to know I wasn't backing down. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude grew even more bitchy and entitled. She started showing up at my house unannounced, demanding to see the inheritance money, accusing me of trying to cheat her out of her rightful share. She'd scream, call me a controlling bastard, and threaten to ruin my reputation. Honestly, it was exhausting. I'd never seen her so aggressive and manipulative. It was like she was on a mission to destroy me, to get everything she thought she deserved. One night she crossed a line. She showed up at my door drunk, belligerent, and shouting. She accused me of cheating on her, of hiding money, and told me she'd ruin me if I didn't give her what she wanted. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying how I'd been unfaithful and untrustworthy. It was classic projection, but it hurt all the same. I looked at her, tired and furious, and told her to leave. I told her I had enough of her lies and manipulations, that I was done playing her game. That night I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I had to draw a line. I started planning how to finalize the legal process, filing for a court order to freeze her assets, protect my inheritance, and make sure she couldn't claim anything I didn't want her to. I also knew I needed to prepare for her next move. She was unpredictable, and I didn't trust her not to escalate things further. Emotionally, I was drained. I felt betrayed, angry, and deeply hurt. I kept replaying her words, her accusations, her threats, her lies. I'd loved this woman once, or at least I thought I did. Now I saw her as a manipulative, entitled person who'd do anything for money. It was crushing. I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare, and I wondered if I'd ever wake up. But amid all the chaos, I found a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to stay strong, to protect myself and what was rightfully mine. I couldn't let her win, emotionally, financially, or legally. I was prepared to fight for my inheritance, for my dignity, and for the life I wanted to rebuild. I realized that I'd been so focused on trying to keep everything together that I'd overlooked how much she'd been manipulating me. Now I was finally seeing the truth. I started to think about what I'd do once this was over. I didn't want her to destroy everything I'd worked for. I wanted to get out, start fresh, and leave her behind. But first I had to win this legal fight. I had to make sure her lies didn't hold up in court. I also knew I'd need to heal, to figure out how to trust again, or if I even could. But one thing was clear: I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I was done being a victim. It was time to take back my life, no matter how hard it would be. As I sat in my apartment late that night, I looked around at the life I had built, alone now but stronger. I thought about the betrayal, the lies, the betrayal of trust, and how I'd come so close to losing everything. But I also knew I had the evidence, the legal backing, and the resolve to see this through. I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance. I was fighting for my dignity, my peace of mind, and my future. I'd come too far to let her win now. Whatever it took, I was going to come out on top. And when this was all over, I'd finally be able to breathe again, knowing I'd fought for what was mine. The final stretch of this mess felt like walking through a storm with no clear end in sight. I had lawyers, courts, and her relentless threats all swirling around me, but I was determined not to let her take everything I'd worked for. I pushed forward with the legal case, gathering every piece of evidence, every email, every invoice, every threatening message she'd sent. It was exhausting, but I knew this was the only way to ensure she didn't get away with her lies or her theft. The court hearings were brutal. Lisa's lawyer tried to spin her story, claiming she was innocent, that I was trying to cheat her out of her rightful share. But I had the proof: bank statements, fake invoices, testimony from witnesses at her workplace. The judge listened carefully, and after reviewing the evidence, he ruled in my favor. He issued an injunction freezing her assets and declared that my inheritance was legally mine, not to be touched or claimed by her. It was a huge relief, but I knew her vindictive side hadn't given up yet. True to form, Lisa didn't go quietly. She ramped up her threats, trying to intimidate me into dropping the case. She called me names, accused me of being a controlling bastard, and even tried to smear my reputation with her family and friends. But I'd learned to ignore her venom. I stayed focused on my goal, protecting what was mine. I also made sure to document every nasty thing she said or did, just in case she tried to escalate further. In the end, she realized she couldn't win legally. Her bluff was called and she was left with nothing. The court's ruling was the final nail in her coffin. I finally felt a sense of relief, like a heavy weight had been lifted. I could finally breathe again, knowing I'd fought for my rights and come out victorious. The inheritance was secured, and she was legally barred from claiming any part of it. Looking back, I see how much I've grown through this ordeal. I learned I'm stronger than I thought, capable of standing up to someone who tried to manipulate and destroy me. I also learned that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. I don't regret standing my ground. I only regret not seeing her true nature sooner. But now I know better. I know to listen to my instincts, to protect myself, and to never let anyone take advantage of my trust again. As I move forward, I feel a mix of relief and sadness. Sadness for what I lost, the years I thought were real, the love I believed in. But also relief that I'm finally free from her manipulations. I've realized that sometimes the biggest act of love you can give yourself is walking away from a toxic, dishonest relationship. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I do know I'll be more cautious, more aware, and more committed to protecting myself. This has been a painful, eye-opening experience, but I refuse to let it define me. I've learned that betrayal can come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes you have to fight hard just to keep what's rightfully yours. I hope my story serves as a warning. Trust your gut, document everything, and never let someone manipulate you into giving up what you've worked so hard for. I finally feel like I can breathe again, and I plan to rebuild my life on the foundation of honesty, integrity, and self-respect.